Hello, everybody, and welcome to Radical Democracy. I am Maddi Cheers. Thank you for joining us. I am really pleased to have live in the studio with me my niece, Jaden Oliver. And I'm actually going to have Jaden introduce herself to you. So, Jaden, I'm going to turn it over to you right now.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is Jaden Oliver. I am from Anadarko, Oklahoma. Um, out here visiting with my Aunt Maddie. I just graduated from college May 2018 last year. I have a degree in sports management, an emphasis in business, and a minor in coaching. And I actually played collegiate basketball. Unfortunately, I had a season-ending injury going into my senior year, so I went back to play a fifth year and decided to pursue my master's degree. So I'm actually 1 year into my master's degree right now, and decided to take a little business trip out here to Long Island, and super excited to be here today.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. So, one of the reasons that I asked Jaden to join us is first, she's a millennial. And for those of you that have been listening to the show for a while, you know that we like to get that intergenerational thing going on here and at the Women's Oneness Project. And it's really important, I think, to get a lot of different perspectives on a lot of different issues. So last week we had Melissa Goodblanket on, and it was a very tough show. I got a lot of beautiful response from people, and it was a very inspiring show to a lot of people talking about the struggles for justice in Native America and the problems that people are facing in Native American communities. So Jaden is one of those success stories, and I'm going to ask her to kind of talk to you all about what she talks about, what the view is from her generation, and how important basketball was and is even still to who she is and who she wants to become. Because I also I don't like stereotypes. I think we do a lot of stereotyping of each other too much, especially in the news media. And there's a lot of stereotypes about millennials, and they're just as different from each other as the rest of us are. So I'm hoping that Jaden's being on the show can kind of clear up a lot of that. Also, I want to let you know that we are live in the studio, which means you can actually call in today. I know we haven't done that for a while, but if you are listening now, if you want to text in or call in, we are at Strong Island Radio on Facebook.com, and we are also the call-in number 516-945-9099. That's 516-945-9099. And you can also find us on the TuneIn app live. So, Jaden, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Okay, so just a little bit about my story. Kind of like I mentioned earlier, I'm from Anadarko, Oklahoma. I was born there. I was actually moved away around like third grade. So my experience continues in Oklahoma City. But speaking on more of Anadarko and where I'm from, there is a lot of what's everywhere else. You have the choice of staying out of the streets and things that happen around you, or you can easily get involved in those things. And for me and a lot of people in Anadarko, there's the game of basketball. And my dad played basketball, so I was kind of able to follow in his footsteps and join the game as well. And it's taken me very far. I committed to Oral Roberts University my junior year in high school. And that was a big deal, just coming from the town that I'm from. A lot of speaking on stereotypes, Native Americans don't go and play Division I basketball. So that in itself was a huge success for me, and coming from the town that I grew up in. And then just speaking more on like what it was able to do for me, like my freshman year at Oral Roberts University, I was actually able to go to Costa Rica. Coming from Anadarko, Oklahoma, that's something that I was not going to be able to afford, flying across the country and being able to play the game that I love. So basketball was able to bring me multiple opportunities as a person, as a player of the game, and was able to teach me different characteristics that I don't think I would have learned if I wasn't devoted into the sport itself.
So, what's great about that, and what I really wanted to ask you about, because one of those criticisms of people your age is that a lot of you guys were raised with the idea that everybody gets a trophy. So, and that is true. I mean, at least in a lot of the neighborhoods that we know about right now, even right here on Long Island, and even where I grew up in Maryland, there's a lot of that. You get a trophy just for participating. So that the problem with that, from our point of view, from people from my generation, and even people who are teachers and psychologists, is you don't get that idea that sometimes people are going to be better at you than something. It doesn't mean you're not great at something else. But I think that that's part of the problem that we see. I was talking to you about this earlier, about how sometimes when I'm having discussions, especially of a political nature, with certain young people, they seem almost afraid to talk to somebody who thinks different than they do. They feel like, oh, if you think differently or you hold a different position, you're threatening them. So, or they think you're a hater,
Right.
or they label you back, so
Right.
the discussion becomes difficult. And if you're brought up thinking that everybody gets a trophy no matter what, I could see where that could be a problem. So I really wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Definitely. So, also coming from Anadarko, Oklahoma, I think I developed tough skin from multiple sides of my ethnicity. I'm Native American, African American, and Caucasian. So growing up and playing a sport in the town, very competitive town, very, you either have it or you don't. And I think that's the problem with society today. Like you said, everybody, being able to receive a trophy. And I don't think it should be like that. Just from how I grew up, you have your first place and then you don't win, and so growing up in that type of competitive nature, I think was something that was able to let me go on and play at the Division I level, and allow me to go and compete with other people who, are playing for people like Baylor now and Houston, because I wasn't brought up hearing, oh, it's okay, Jaden, you still won. If we weren't first place, we didn't win, and we went home and we tried to, develop other things and other skills that were going to enhance me to become that first place person. And being someone who's graduated now and out into the real world, I see the problem a lot with, I know I'm still a millennial, but the younger generation, and them thinking that, it is okay for everybody. You have these organizations out here that, everybody gets a trophy, everybody's involved, and everyone gets to play. And I don't think that's setting these kids up for success in the real world, because then they apply for jobs and they're trying to follow their dreams, and they're getting told constructive criticism. And they think, kind of like you said, oh, well, they don't see my vision, or they just don't feel me, and, they are a hater. So I think more of constructive criticism does need to be intact now in today's society, and I think that it would be a more realistic approach for the kids to go into if they did have more of the constructive criticism. I personally had that from my dad. So, I didn't.
Me too.
I didn't always like to hear the constructive criticism, from my dad, especially coming from my dad. You want, your parents to always, be there for you and, comfort you when you don't win all the time. But I'm super thankful that my dad was realistic with me and let me know, the things that I did need to work on to be better and become a better person, a better ball player altogether, because I think it's brought me far. And I think that's what separates me from other people that are millennials in my age right now, because they don't know how to attack adversity or face adversity whenever they do hit that wall. And so for me, I was super blessed, like I said, to be able to have that at a young age and develop it, because I couldn't imagine applying for a job or, applying to, even if it's for a certain team, trying out. If I get told, if I'm not first, I feel like I haven't won. And so I have more of a drive to try and overcome that. And I think if we had more of that in today's society, we'd be a lot successful on multiple levels, not just in the sports world. I think academically, I think, with different different things that people are trying to bring to the table or get across, messages and stuff. I think that if people did have that constructive criticism, they would be able to get past the adversity and whatever they may be seeking, and then we'd have a lot more success at the end of the day, which would lead to a better world, in my opinion.
I totally agree. And Linda Chambers, if you're out there listening, like you said you would be, I don't have the quotes you sent me because I left my phone in the cars because we were kind of in a rush. We had a little craziness getting in here. So, but I do remember seeing the quote she said from Michelle Kwan. So I'm not going to be able to quote it exactly. But for those of you who don't know who Michelle Kwan is, she won the Olympic gold as a figure skater. She was the U.S. champion several times over, I think. I think she might have even been the Olympic women's figure skating champion more than once. If I get that wrong, I apologize to all figure skating fans everywhere. But what she did say, the quote that Linda sent me said that is something like, she said she always admires the people that win. Mm-hmm. She thinks they're great. It's wonderful when you can win. She said, but her real admiration is for the people who fail, who fall down, who don't give up, and who get up and try again and again and again until they do.
Definitely.
So that, I think, that resilience that we talked about and that you had growing up in a tough place and with a dad, and same for me, that was, I would call my dad hypercritical, but he probably wouldn't.
Right.
But I do think the advantage of growing up with somebody that requires you to do your best is very important. And I think that where society is at fault is that we say to kids, unless you have a job like being a champion basketball player, unless you have a job like being a corporate lawyer, unless you have a job where you're a surgeon, you're really not as important, or you're a politician or you're the president, and rather than saying everybody's job is equal. And this is where the teachings for me from Native America have helped me in dealing with adversity, with young people who are having issues, or even in talking to young people, because the old way of looking at things was that as long as you are contributing to the community, whatever your talent is, and we've talked about this on the show a number of times, that you are valuable.
Yeah.
And that when you're raised by people who are looking for your talent and looking for what's best in you, then you think about, well, okay, I love playing basketball. Great. I'm going to do it to keep in shape. I'm going to do it because it's fun. And I love winning when my team wins or my group wins or when we're at the Y or the JCC or wherever you play. But this is what I want to find in my life, is what is my purpose.
Right, definitely. I think, kind of like you mentioned, I think it's important for the elders and the older generation to be realistic with their child or their grandchild in the things that they're trying to pursue. Maybe that sport or maybe that talent that they're trying to develop in is not for them. So I think it's important for the elder to, be realistic with them in a sense that if it's not for them, maybe they're great at the next thing. And, that can help the kid really be able to figure out what's for them and a purpose, and help them kind of find that pathway that they can go down and actually become successful in at the end of the day. And once that kid reaches that point, then I think when they realize, okay, that wasn't for me, but this is for me, and I can wholeheartedly give my time into this. And at the end of the day, they don't know how or where that could take them if they do that. You know what I mean? If they do those things. But like you said, we have people who don't get that across to them, so they try 10 years or 8 years in something that at the end of the day, and it's not for them. And unfortunately, then you have some kids where they don't feel like they're enough, and they don't feel like they're loved, or, they're never going to be successful. And then unfortunately, I feel like that's where today in our society we have a lot of suicides, a lot of people feeling like, they're not capable of achieving something, when in reality, if somebody along their path would have been more realistic with them, they could have turned their energy into something else, and then could have really just fulfilled their potential. So that's definitely something that I seek for the younger generation and the generation that's here. For millennials, I hope that more millennials would speak on topics like that. I would like to open up a nonprofit organization for less fortunate kids one day. And I would want to give these kids what I was able to have growing up. You know what I mean? Like I said, I played multiple sports growing up, but my parents seen what was going to get me out of where I came from. They seen what was going to be able to give me an opportunity. And so once they put that focus on me, and I was told I had to dive in, and I had to dedicate time, and I had to just really figure out what I wanted to do and what I wanted to be, it was a lot easier for me then to focus all my attention on that topic, or whatever I was trying to pursue at the time. So, like, if I could give that message to the kids that I work with every day, I feel like I could reduce the feeling that some kids are experiencing these days, which is unfortunately thoughts like suicide, or thoughts like they're not enough, like there's not a purpose for them in the world. So for me, I'm forever thankful because basketball was able to get me here. I mean, who would have thought basketball would have me wanting to change kids' lives and give them a purpose, Most people would think I would just want to go and score 20. But that's actually not the case. It's basketball has done so much more for me through the things that I've learned in the development of becoming, a certain type of collegiate basketball player. So I would just hope that people that are listening today, like you guys, would be more realistic with your kids and your grandkids and your friends or your friends' friends, because you don't know what they could be inspired to do once they find something that is actually for them.
Exactly. And I think that is a huge issue. One thing you touched on, where the parents and grandparents have unrealistic expectations. And the other thing is the resilience that you had. You had a career-ending injury. I remember my niece Emily was a spectacular soccer player from the time she was little. And I remember specifically one game they played where the other team, and she was little, so people were always surprised at how good she was. So, but I remember this one game where the team lost because of a maneuver she made, and they were very, very upset. They ended up getting kicked out of the tournament. They weren't allowed to play anymore because the parents lost their minds.
Oh, wow.
They literally cursing at her. I mean, like in front of I think she was 9 at the time, or 10. So and that kind of thing, not only does it give your children unrealistic expectations, but you're not doing that for your child. You're doing that for you.
Right, at that point.
That's you. You've just eliminated all your children from the elementary school tournament. How is that for your children? That was not for them. That was so that you could be upset at a call that the ref made. And forgive me if it's not a ref in soccer, because it's been a long time since I've been to a soccer game. I did not grow up with sports. I was always like the kid picked last for the team. And my cousins were great basketball players and great tennis players, and they would laugh at me often in trying to teach me. I'm also only 5'2", so that's my excuse for basketball. I have no excuse for tennis other than I'm terrible at it. But I did grow up in theater. And theater gives you the same kind of self-discipline. And like you were able to come back from a career-ending injury. Emily was able to find something else to do when she had an ankle injury that was it in high school. She was not going to play in college, but she was able to come back. You were able to come back because the sports teach you to get back up and try again. If you're in theater, you're not going to make every audition. You got to put yourself out there, and if they say no, it's no, and you can't quit.
Right.
So I think that that when kids do get involved in the arts, when they do get involved in sports, and when the grown-ups around them have realistic expectations, like you're talking about, you're playing for fun, honey. You
Right.
play a good game of basketball. My nephew Kyle, who is very tall, if he's listening, he's going to kill me for this, but I'm not saying your last name, honey. So he was very tall, and the people in his elementary school and middle school, when I went to watch him play, his coach was like, "This kid should play ball." Except that he hasn't got a competitive bone in his body.
Right.
He just didn't, he loved playing basketball. He had a great time doing it, but just, win, lose, it wasn't
Yeah.
really what he was into.
I was gonna say, and I think that's another thing with the whole realistic, and accepting constructive criticism. There are leagues out here that are just for fun. You know what
Yes.
I mean? And there's nothing wrong with that. Like I'm not talking to you guys on the mic today to say don't go play any sport if your kid doesn't get it the first time. No, absolutely not. I'm just saying, after the first couple of tries, or after you're there for 3 weeks and you're playing and it's not for you, then go seek other things. But there are organizations that are for fun, and the kid can go just enjoy their time. But for the ones that are trying to, like for me, I didn't pay a dime for my undergrad degree. A lot of kids out
Great.
here can't say that, and I'm super blessed. But I don't think a lot of people understand. It took a lot of nights in the gym to get that undergrad for free. It took a lot of dedication, a lot of time, a lot of not going and hanging out with my friends, and dedicating my time to a ball and to being in a gym day in and day out to get me to have my scholarship and have school completely paid for, which is a blessing. And I think that if that was emphasized more, we would have more kids that would be able to just go and enjoy a sport simply because they just are interested in the sport and they just love watching it, or they want to be a part of a team. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I just think if we were more realistic, you have a softball player that is in, say they're trying soccer for the first time and it's just not for them, but the parent wants them to continue to seek that sport, and they're 2 years into soccer when they could really have been developing piano lessons or
Right.
something else that could take
Right.
them far in life. Instead, they're feeling not enough and like they're never going to make it for 2 years when they could go try something else and start to expand their vision and truly who they want to be in life. And I think that plays a big difference in it too, whether it's either for you and you're going to try and get the most out of it, or you're just going to settle down and just go have fun with the sport. And again, that's, I think, on the parents and the elders to voice their opinion and to be in the kids' life as they try and figure out those things.
Exactly. And that is our responsibility as the adults, as the mentors, as the people who love you. That is our responsibility to say to our children, try it. Go ahead and try it. Try anything you want to try. And some things will become a hobby.
Right.
And the good thing about playing sports as your way of staying in shape is all kids like to feel like they belong. All kids want a peer group.
Yeah.
So even if you are not going to grow up to be a sports player, the playing sports, being in a theater group, being in the school orchestra, being in any group that requires you to be responsible to other people, to have self-discipline. Anyone will tell you who studies psychology that all successful people, and I'm not talking about success like making $1 million, I
Right.
mean people who consider themselves successful, people who are happy. What makes them successful is that they have self-discipline and self-control, and that they are able to focus on whatever it is that they feel they want their life to be about. And the other thing the other two things they have are flexibility and resilience.
Definitely.
And you get all of that in sports and the arts.
Right.
All of that.
I think if people did know me, and thanks for the ones that do that are listening right now, I went through a pretty traumatizing injury my senior year. I dislocated my shoulder, season opener, unfortunately, and it was career ending, like you mentioned. And a lot of people would think, and a lot of my doctors did think, that I was pretty crazy to go back and play a fifth year. But it was more so one, being thankful to have all arms and limbs again, and understand importance in that, but it was the game of basketball and everything that had given to me as to why I truly went back to finish what I started, you know?
Yeah.
And I think, like you said, flexibility and resilience, I could have went and done anything else that I wanted. I could have went and chased the dreams that I'm trying to now, but I wanted to go back and give back to the game, you know, what the game gave to me. Like I said, I was able to go all across the country, travel to all these different states through a basketball. And just being, you know, having that resilience, I wanted to come back, being a competitor as well, come back and demolish, you know, what almost took, you know, my ability to have a left arm away. So I was super eager to go back and say, one, just that I did it. You know what I mean?
Right,
And I
right.
knew that in that, though, there was so much more that I was going to learn. I hadn't truly gotten my arm to playing like status yet, but I accepted the challenge, and I knew along that year that I was going to learn so much about myself. You know, I learned how to truly become a leader. I wasn't able to do all the things on the court that I used to do prior to my injury, so it was a challenge. You know, not being able to come out and score 20 every game and having to play different roles. And kind of like you said, you know, with kids, their role may not be certain things. On the team this year, you know, I mean, I scored. I had a couple of good games, you know, where I did drop 20, but I also had to learn how to be a true leader, you know, bring my team all in. And those are things that are now, and I'm figuring out being here in the Big Apple, dealing with all these people, you know, that I'm trying to network with and work with. You know, don't get me wrong, the first people I talked to, they just kind of shunned me off, you know, and I don't think they were really interested in the message and the things that I want to give to the world. And I think if it wasn't for basketball, and like I said, that those traits that I was able to learn, I probably would have got back on the plane and went back home and, you know, cried or, you know, dwelled in the responses that I was getting back. But because of the game, I've been here for 16 days now, and I've made great connections, and I've gotten to talk to people. But that's what basketball was able to do for me. And that, like I said, having a very competitive father guide me and be constructive with me, you know, give me constructive criticism, was able to give me more of like a fighting edge out here in the real world. You know what I mean?
Right.
That I wouldn't have gained if I didn't play the sport, you know, or if I did hear, you know, when I was last place, you know, oh, you're first. And so, like I said, coming out here to New York City and being from the small town that I'm from, nobody really shook my confidence or, you know, steered me in the opposite direction because I was so eager to get my message across, you know, and get people to really buy in for what I'm saying and the things that I'm trying to speak on and stuff. And just speaking for basketball, like if I wouldn't have had, you know, the adversity with the shoulder dislocation. I was basically without a left arm for 7.5 months. I wasn't able to do anything. I had no sensation in my left arm for 2 months. So it was just a blessing, you know, in disguise that I didn't realize at the time now. And it's crazy how basketball and an injury can carry over to my life and what I'm trying to do, you know, in the world. And most people, you know, like I said, they thought I was crazy, but it was so much more that I knew I was going to learn and endure during that time of coming back and making that decision that was able to help me out here in New York City, actually, you know, while I'm trying to pursue certain things. So I'm just forever, you know, thankful for the people who have played a part in that in my life. My, you know, grandparents, my mom, my dad, even my little sisters, they're pretty competitive themselves, you know, and they'll be like, Jay, what are you out there doing? You know, shoot the ball. You know, we're watching the game. Slide your feet, you know, lock down. So our family's pretty competitive. And so that's like why I stress the importance of being realistic in today's society, you know. We actually played Baylor my freshman year, and we got blew out by 40. But it wasn't the score or anything that we focused on. It was the reality of we have work to do. You know, we need to go back to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we need to put our shoes on. And, you know, those kids for Baylor lace their shoes up just like we do. And so it was like it was crazy, like I said, to, take a loss that bad. And the whole message was, we have to get better in all aspects, on the court, as a person, with confidence going into a game like that. And so those things, I think, all were good things that played a part in the reality of the game and the reality of just, people to people. Hey, you need to go work on this, and hey, you need to go do that. And at the end of the day, it not only made us better as a team and better to go compete, but better as people. You know what I mean? And made me want to be, hard on my little sisters. They're trying to figure out right now what their niche is in the world. And poor things, they're not basketball players, but that's okay, because one is a great dancer, a phenomenal dancer, and then the other is a phenomenal piano player. And it's funny because they were, just speaking on my family in general, we're so realistic with each other that my little sister Sage was in the car one day, and she was going to a basketball game, and she told my dad, hey, Daddy, listen, I'm going to play in this last tournament, but after this, I'm not playing anymore, okay? And it was just because she knew, she knew that it may not be for her anymore, and that she wanted to go seek other things. And what did my dad do? What can you say to your child that is telling you, hey, I'm going to play in this one, but after this, I'm done. But it allowed her, like I said, to go and seek other things that she, would be good at, and that would help her, move forward in life and find a purpose. And like I said, she was able to go and find piano, and she loves playing the piano, and she's really good at it now. And just like my middle sister, JC, I wanted her to play softball so bad. I also played softball growing up. And we thought she was going to be it. She was built a little different than me, and she got out there and she couldn't find the ball for nothing. And it was
That's
okay.
me. That was me.
It was okay, though. After the game, we talked about it, and just like my dad being the type of person that he is, it was more about basketball getting me to where I wanted to be at the end of the day, which, is why we did dive so hard into the type of player that I eventually became. But with JC, she was able to, like I said, okay, well, this isn't for me. Let me go be better and the best at something else.
Exactly.
And
exactly. That is, we've talked before on the show about we need to switch the way we educate children away from this idea of a test and this one size fits all kind of mentality. What we need to start telling children is that you can be excellent at something.
Yeah.
Is striving for excellence. And I think that when you are involved in sports and the arts, that's what you're talking about. When you got blown out by Baylor, you guys went back and said, whoa, we have work to do. So it makes you self-critical. It also makes you self-confident.
Definitely.
Because you can depend on yourself to solve problems within a group. So it makes you great at teamwork. We've talked a lot on this show about education. And one of the things that Jack Ma, who's the billionaire, there's a great rap video now about changing education. And of course, me being old, probably if you had seen it, you would remember the name of the guy, but I can't. But he quotes Jack Ma, the same quote that we've used on the show before. So for those of you who don't know Jack Ma, he is the Chinese billionaire who developed Alibaba, which is this huge $420 billion tech company, right?
Okay.
And he's left. He has dedicated his life and his billions to changing the way human beings are educated, to change education back to focusing on the things that human beings are great at, like being creative. And he talks about we need to have our children playing sports. We need them to understand what teamwork is. They need to be in music classes every day, in art classes, in theater classes. These are the things that make us human.
Right.
They need to develop critical thinking. So like you and I were talking in the car, coming over here. When I was growing up, I was talking to my friend Michelle yesterday about how much she hated history. She's like 28. I think you're 22, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And she, she hated school, and she couldn't wait to get out, and became, an amazingly talented, wonderful, gifted hairstylist, which there's a lot of call for.
Right, yeah.
And it's creative, and she's a fabulous person. But she hated history and hated social studies, hated high school, like a lot of kids do, because it's so focused on the test, and it's very hard if you're not involved in sports or something else that's teaching you, okay, this is a means to an end.
Yeah.
I'm going to have the self-discipline to at least get through high school so I can go to college, or I can go to trade school, or I can get to the next step in my life. If you're really feeling, if school is making you feel stupid, because you're not doing the things that school is telling you to do, then it's our fault.
Right.
It's us as teachers, it's us as adults, it's us as politicians. It's not our children's fault.
Yeah, definitely.
It's us that have to change. And I think when Jack Ma and Bill Gates, and I always forget the names of the guys that had Google, but they're in there too. They're all calling for this huge change in education, going back to a more humanistic approach. And every single one of them, who all send their children to private school, by the way, where they do emphasize sports, and they do emphasize art and music and theater and literature. Literature was taken out of the core curriculum. They're not writing to be creative anymore in high school. They're writing to write a business report, to be a drone.
Right.
So what you're talking about is wonderful and beautiful and brilliant, and should be a warning to us. One of the things that I love in American Indian culture is this concept that, yes, the child in the old days, especially when the grandparents were the teachers, because mom and dad were taking care of everybody's survival, grandparents were teaching children, and the grandparents had, like we talked about earlier, the job of seeing what the child's talent and gift and interest was.
Right.
But the other thing is that idea that we are obligated to the next 7 generations. If you're going to take the way the Haudenosaunee express it, I'm sure there's a way the Kiowa express it too. It is our obligation to take care of the earth so that it's here for you. It's our obligation to take care of you and to look at you as an individual that then can help the community, because you'll be a happy individual.
Definitely.
If we're creating unhappy individuals, we have no community.
Right, right. And then we have a lot of disengaged families, and that, you can only, there's a number of things that can lead to, you know what I mean? Parents splitting up, parents, getting divorces, family members not speaking with other family members. But like you said, if you have that, cohesion of everybody being all in and having an understanding, then like you said, for the next 7 generations, you have all these, traits. You have authenticity, you have loyalty, you have realness, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's only just going to carry down if everybody keeps that up for the next generations to come. And then what do you know? Then we have a world,
Yes.
that is working together as one. Not everybody, and like we said in the car earlier too, not everybody has to think the same way.
Right.
If we all thought the same way, I don't think this world would be enjoyable.
No.
What I mean? I don't think we would be able to learn from one another and truly figure out, the next process in certain things. So I'm not saying, everybody needs to think the same way and, I say this and you do that. No, but if you have everybody on the same page with the things, like we said, that are the reality of things, then it's a whole nother ball game. You know what I mean? Then you just have, like I said, next generations to come speaking on the realities of the world and the things that are going to benefit kids and the generation as a whole. And then I think then is where you find true success, like we talked about. To me, that's what I would say, true success is. I would say that my parents are 2 of the most successful people. And like you said,
Exactly.
They're definitely not the richest people in the world. But they figured out what their niche was in the world, and they attacked it. My dad owns his own business, Micah's Tree Service in Oklahoma City. And one thing that really caught my attention one day, I always thought my dad was going to be in the NBA, and we were going to be watching him play in the playoffs now. And but my parents had me at a young age, and they had to make sacrifices. And one thing that I think they were realistic with each other about was figuring out what was next. And my mom being realistic with my dad. I don't think you can be out here trying to make it to an NBA tryout, and we have a kid on the way. And so them being realistic with one another enhanced my dad to think creative and want to find the next thing that was for him. And truly be able to provide. And he was able, like I said, to find something that he enjoyed doing. And so one day, referring back to what he had said to me, we were waking up, and I was kind of down. I was actually, so I finished my played my first 2 years at Oral Roberts University in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and then actually transferred to an NAIA school in Kansas and played 2 years. And so when I was talking to my dad about, feeling like I had let down this as a person, I felt like going from a Division I school to an NAIA school, I was going to be lesser of a ball player, lesser of a person, And my dad said to me, "Do you think I wanted to cut trees all day? Do you think that was my dream growing up?" And he said, "But you know what? It's what I do, and I'm the best tree arborist in Oklahoma City."
Yes.
And that there was like my paradigm shift. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to go and I'm going to be the best basketball player. I'm going to become the best person. I'm going to become all around truly realistic with myself, and I'm going to go endure these things that I can achieve at this level, in this new state. And it was something that, like I said, that wouldn't have came, though, if, my mom wasn't realistic with my dad. My dad could have went on and tried and still be trying to play for an NBA team, and but then being realistic, allowed him to go seek something else that was truly for him. And like I said, now, I mean, you can't tell my dad he's not the best tree arborist in Oklahoma City. He wears that definitely and wholeheartedly, and
Sure.
so that is like the beauty in realism, and being realistic with yourself. And I think that is what's going to be able to separate people.
And it's also the beauty in making a commitment.
Definitely.
I think that basketball taught your dad that, and then your dad and mom taught you that, because their commitment for them was something more important than whether or not they were going to be a basketball player. It was you.
Right.
So that your dad never, it's obvious from talking to you and getting to know you that your dad and mom never gave you that sense that you kept them from doing something, that that somehow your birth was like the worst thing that happened and I think that a lot of what you are a beautiful example of is being a child that was parented well.
Definitely.
And Celia, I hope you're out there listening. Somehow I'm having trouble seeing any comments or anything, but I'm going to repost this in my sister has a group called Pumped Up Parenting, because everything you're saying and your ability to honor your parents and your ability to understand that that the things that you have achieved are directly connected to the lessons that your parents taught you. And I think that one of the things that is happening in school now that I see that really is distressing to me is that kids are because of all this hyper testing, kids are being told, and they're not getting a different message at home, a lot of them, that unless they get it right the first time, it's no good. And not just right, but perfect. I mean, I will sit there and do clay pots with kids that fall into tears because their clay pot doesn't look like my clay pot. And I'm not that great at clay pots, but I really like making them. But I've also made them for the last 20 years. And I'll go out of my way to get that message across to them. But if that message is not reinforced at home, and if what's being reinforced at school is you have to get this A on this test, so our school gets this money from this government, so if you don't get the A, if you don't do really well on the test that we're teaching to, then you're letting down your whole school. So it is it is on us, and your parents are a beautiful example of, and there are lots of parents that are a beautiful example of this. Don't get me wrong. I know a lot of them personally, but that we as a culture have to turn around and say we've made a mistake, which is one of the hardest things for grown-ups to do,
Yeah.
is to admit that we made a mistake. We made a mistake. The national core curriculum was a mistake.
Yeah.
We need to dump that. We need to get rid of standardized testing, because we don't have kids that have beautiful, well, not all of them. There are some children out there that don't have the beautiful, wonderful parents that you had, that I had, that fortunately a lot of other kids have, but there are those that don't. And when they don't, their only place they can turn to is school. And if school isn't providing sports and music and art, if school isn't looking at you and going, okay, you're really bad at math, but you know what? You made a great painting over there. So let's think about that, because, I have a nephew who's a graphic artist who that's his job. He
Right.
was always great at art. It's not that there aren't jobs. There are jobs. There are wonderful, fulfilling things that people could do, whether they go to college or not. But you somewhere as a young person, you have to get that message from your parents, or you have to get it from some adults around you in school if it's not coming from your parents.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think it's beautiful that you're honoring your parents like this. You're honoring your parents by having grown up to be a wonderful human, and that's the great thing. Also, that's what I love about. I remember when we were learning about disciplinary actions in the old way in Native American, specifically, once again among the Haudenosaunee here in New York, that we were talking about how, if a child was disrespectful, they really only got in trouble for disrespect, but that could include disrespecting yourself.
Yeah.
So, like, laziness is a form of disrespect, or not following through. I said I was going to do this and I didn't do it. I'll do it later. so that if you are parenting a child with self-respect, you don't have to worry quite as much about, do they have respect for others?
Yeah.
So it's those 4 directions of respect, like the Cheyennes say about, respect for your elders who are your teachers, respect for your community who are your helpers, respect for nature because it gives up its life for you,
Right.
and respect for yourself, so then you can help others. But if you never have that, you can't be the best in the world that you can be.
Yeah. And it's kind of like a thing, like you said, there's wonderful, parents out there that we are not speaking about as well right now. For me, it all started, years ago with my big brother and my big sister, who that would be considered my great-grandmother and great-grandfather in my Native American language. They founded that,
Right.
and I mean, they've been passed away for, years now.
Right.
So it's something that has to be engraved, in the
Yep.
families and withheld throughout the generations. And it's all on the next generation and the next to, pass it along. And for me, like I said, growing up in the culture that I grew up in, nobody gets left behind. We're family.
Right.
We're all that we have. And especially trying to make it out of a town where we are from, Anadarko, Oklahoma, that support is very necessary and is very critical in how I was able to think growing up. Like I said, being from there, and I tell people, well, my dream is to work for the Los Angeles Lakers. I want to do basketball operations.
Right.
And they look at me like I'm crazy, and I look back at them like, and when I get there, I'll send you a ticket,
Right.
and that confidence purely comes from my big brother and my big sister years ago, installing that in our family, and motivating and inspiring to chase a dream, to get somewhere, and to be resilient along the way. That's one thing that my tribe stands for, is resilience.
Exactly.
We've made a lot of sacrifices to be where we are today, to come over to this land, and we had land taken from us, and we never stopped. We learned to never stop. And I think that's another thing that today's society needs to endure, is the will to not stop when things get hard or when things get
Yes.
tough. You know,
Yes.
anybody that had gone through what I had gone through would have gave up when they decided to transfer from their Division I school.
Right.
You know, they would have thought, oh well, you know, I played Division I, and you know, that's the highest level of college basketball. There's nothing more I can get out of the game. No, there was so much more, you know, for me to learn and endure along the process, and that all, like I said, comes from a family of the things that we were able to teach each other, you
Yeah.
know, and being resilient and being aggressive, you know, and learning how to accept constructive criticism and using that in a way to motivate us to be more and to do more. If we had more of that, I think you would see a lot more success in the things that you're talking about in
Yeah.
school, in liberal arts, you know, and it would be a place where kids would not feel like they have, like I mentioned, you know, the ones that are committing suicide and stuff, they would know there is something out here for me and I'm
Yes.
going to get there, you know. And unfortunately, I want to motivate the ones who don't have a family like I was able to have. You have somebody talking to you right here that the sky's the limit. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
mean, it's what you put your heart to. It's what you're gonna devote your time to. I do also think, you know, you have to want it.
Yes.
Ultimately, you know, I mean, your family can tell you a million times you're going to be a great this, you're going to be a great that. You know, stay in it. It's a marathon, like my favorite rapper would say. You know, it's not a sprint. You know, you don't have to get there right away.
Right.
It's going to take time, and you have to learn lessons along the way. You have to get knocked down to come back 10 times stronger. I honestly think there's more power in the failure right away than there is in the success right away. You
Yes.
know what I mean?
Yes.
Definitely.
And I think that was Michelle Kwan's point, is
Mm-hmm.
that it's the people that can get up again and again and again
Yeah.
that are the ones that end up being successful at something, even if it's not their sport or
Right.
their theater or their whatever their choice is, or the idea that you can. That's what gives you confidence. Is, oh, I did keep getting up. I
Yeah.
didn't just lay there on the ground
Right.
and give up. So it's the getting up, not the giving up. But and I also think the fact that you are so committed to giving back has to do with your culture. I mean, I had the great good fortune of meeting your great grandfather and your great grandmother
Yeah.
many years ago, who you refer to as your big brother and your big sister.
Mm-hmm.
But your I can't even say enough about your big brother. He gave back all the time,
Mm-hmm.
all the time, even in inviting non-Indian people, a whole group of 25 people from New York into his tiny little living room,
Right.
so he could tell us our stories. And your great grandmother giving us stuff to drink and cutting up watermelon and
Some fry
melons for
bread,
us
probably.
to eat. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so you grew up seeing that example of that kind of generosity and that idea of reciprocity.
Mm-hmm.
And it is particular to your culture and all American Indian cultures, and we don't see that in our non-Indian cultures. We are not teaching our children
Yeah.
this idea of reciprocity, this idea of commitment and community.
I think, you know, I think that's why we did invite the 25 New Yorkers, you know, to the house.
Right.
Because my big brother knew, you know, I mean, you could see the generation trends that were starting to go on even then when he was still here with us. And he had a calling for that and a heart to change the direction of where people were going and how society was thinking. And that's why I do think he tried to involve as many people as he could.
Right.
You know what I mean? And don't get me wrong, there are people who are Native American who are in the family who are not a motivator or an inspire. And, you know, they may hate because, you know, me and my family have developed certain things and we are ahead of the game, which they, you know, they may think. And for us, we're never complacent. You know, we're never satisfied. We're never content with anything that we have. We always strive to be better and want more. And one thing that, like, kind of like you mentioned, and absolutely correct. That is why I want to do what I want to do. That is why I want to open a nonprofit organization for less fortunate kids. I want these kids who are in society who have these feelings, in the school, if it is the school that's giving them, these feelings that they're not going to be something in life and they're not going to be successful one day. A place to come and truly be themselves and figure those things out and be around people who are motivators and inspirers and relay the message that in order to get to where you want to be, you have to be resilient. You're not
Yes.
going to get there by being soft-spoken or, not sticking up for what you believe in. And getting told no and just backing down,
Yep.
So that's definitely, it is something that is on my heart to do for the world because I was so blessed to grow up in that, and like I mentioned, there definitely are family members who, they don't see it or they may think certain type of way just because of the opportunities that me and my family have had. But they're even more motivation as well. You know what I mean? To
Yep.
truly go and get these things that we want. And then I can look back and give back to them one day. And maybe they'll, these people in the town that I come from will have the confidence, if Jaden Oliver can do it and she's from Anadarko, Oklahoma, she grew up the same block I did, or I was ripping and running outside with her, when we were 5. If she can do it, then I can do it, and I truly think like, for me, that's what it's all about. You know what I mean? I'm not going to
Exactly.
sit here and tell all my successes because I'm not finished.
Yeah.
I really haven't even started.
And that's the whole thing
Yeah.
is that we need to start leading by example
Definitely.
instead of leading with the mouth. We
Yeah.
need to lead with the heart
Actions.
and the mind and the actions. So thank you so much, my dear, for
Yeah.
being here today.
Of
Thank you very
course.
much. I'm sorry if people made comments and I didn't see them, but you know me, I'm like completely technically challenged. So, Jaden, you'll have to come back and report how things are going.
Okay.
You'll have to come back
Yeah,
on.
definitely.
And thank you, everybody. Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, everybody at Strong Island Radio. Check it out. If you joined us late, you want to hear the whole thing, we're archived on Strong Island Radio. And check out Strong Island TV. Wonderful things are going on here. Thank you all so much. Peace, love, purpose. Thank you.